Welcome to Scars to Stars, where conversations and personal stories let us know we are not alone. In this show, you will meet authors and speakers from our books and events as they share vulnerable personal stories to spread hope and inspire you through adversities in your own life. The world is a difficult place. You will find like-minded people here with kind hearts and supportive souls. I am your host, Dina Brown Mitchell. I am a suicide survivor and the founder of the Realize Foundation. I am so glad you are here. Let's dig into this meaningful conversation. Hi, everybody. It's Dina at the Realize Foundation, and I'm here with another special guest. And I want to welcome Cara. She's a romance author, but I think she's maybe written some other books that you're going to want to hear about at the end of this. And she's going to tell us about her breast cancer journey. Welcome.
Thank you, Dina. Thanks so much for having me. I'm honored to be here. I think you do such good work on this podcast, and you're shining a light in the dark for so many people, and I think that's important.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that. Well, tell everybody a little more about you.
Yeah. So I'm a USA Today bestselling romance author. That's how I make my living. And I've written over 40 books, and 2 of them have become movies, one on Lifetime and one on Hallmark. So normally I write happily ever afters. But in 2023, I was diagnosed with breast cancer during a routine mammogram. So there wasn't any, I didn't have a lump. I wasn't worried. Cancer didn't run in my family. This was simply a checkbox I was doing, a task that I was getting off my list. At the time, my husband and I were on our COBRA insurance. He had just started a business, and I'm a contract worker. So, it was just like, I'm gonna check this box, and I'm gonna go in and have that mammogram, and then we'll worry about insurance later. And then it turned out we needed to worry about insurance right now, because I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and it really did completely turn my life upside down. As cancer does. I mean, it just kind of bursts into your life uninvited, changes the rules, becomes your first priority. Everything else goes to the side. We're a blended family, and we have 5 children between us. And at the time, 3 of them were in high school. And so, needless to say, we were already very busy. We didn't have time for cancer, but cancer came anyway. And when I first got the diagnosis, I was, completely petrified. I think, as most people naturally are. When the radiologist told me the biopsy was malignant, I sort of went into this white room of panic and denial, I think. And then when I put the phone down, like I was there, I was pretend like I was answering the questions. But then when I put the phone down, my husband came in, asked me questions, and I was like, I don't know. He said cancer, and I don't know what happened. And I think that's a common reaction, for a lot of people, because it's just so overwhelming that you just don't know what to do with it, because at the time, it's not something you expect. Nobody chooses cancer. No one says, this is the path I want to try. Let me go down this path. Cancer decides for you. So during the treatments, I ended up having a double mastectomy. I had chemotherapy. I had immunotherapy. It was 16 months of treatment before I was officially in remission and, officially healthy. And thankfully, I'm healthy now. But it was quite a journey. And I think for so many people, it's so incredibly fearful during that time of not knowing what's going to happen, not knowing, if you're going to go into remission, not knowing how bad your treatment is going to be, not knowing if your treatment is going to work. And after my experience, I wrote the book, There's No Good Book for This, but I wrote one anyway, The Irreverent Guide to Fighting Breast Cancer, because I really wanted to reach back and help others who were in that tailspin, who felt hopeless, who weren't sure where to turn or how to even start battling this cancer. Like when I told my friends that I was diagnosed with breast cancer, many of them were super supportive, but there were also some that were like, "Oh, you've got it. You're a fighter. You've got it." And I'm like, I'm not a fighter. I'm not, like, I'm a romance novelist. Like, I like happy endings and, all the feels. And, I'm not a gladiator or like, what am I supposed to do? Like, it just felt so completely overwhelming. And the thing is that it's a journey that doesn't happen overnight. Like, it's bravery or fighting cancer. You do this afraid. Like it's not something that, you just brush off and everything's fine. And you just, you kick cancer and you keep going. It's a journey where you are afraid and overwhelmed and you take that step forward anyway. And there's no good book for this. Is both sort of like, a pep talk guy. Every chapter has a pep talk. So it's a guide toward how you get there. It's also a commiseration. There's quite a few F-bombs in there because I feel like if there's any proper time to curse, it's when you're dealing with breast cancer. So I hope that it helps others. And I also did decide that 50% of the proceeds will go toward cancer charities, the Susan G. Komen Foundation and the Breast Cancer Research Foundation, because quite honestly, I would like nothing more than for no one to ever have to read this book again. Let's just cure cancer, and then no one ever has to worry about this, again, because it's absolutely terrifying for so many.
I love your commentary around that. It's awesome. I have to say, I used to run an event. I was on the hotel side and I did events, and we used to have an event every year for Susan G. Komen that was put on by American Airlines, and it was an awesome event every year, and all these celebrities would come and they'd raise all this money, and it was one of my favorite group to work with, and that was really cool. But anyway, I love the name of the book.
Yes.
And I love that. I mean, can I ask you to tell us what books you wrote that were movies? Because people are going to want to know that.
Yeah, absolutely. So my very first book was called I Do But I Don't. And that was turned into a Lifetime movie with Denise Richards and Dean Cain. And it's currently still streaming on Amazon Prime, all these years later. I think it was made in 2004 or 2003. That was at the beginning of my career, and I've been out here a long time. But yeah, so it was a thrill because, and in some ways I was spoiled because it was my first book. So I just thought, oh, well, everybody's first book is made into a movie, and this is how it works.
Not true.
Not true. It's very, very hard to get a book made into a movie. But it was a thrill because I got to go to set and I met Denise Richards and Dean Cain. And Denise Richards at the time was married to Charlie Sheen. That was, I think, before most of his memoir stories and the Netflix documentary. But he was very nice. Very kind. They all were very kind. So that was the first book. The second book is The Dater's Handbook on the Hallmark Channel, and it stars Meghan Markle, who that was before she became Duchess and then gave back the title. So I did not get to meet her, however, but the movie is a lot of fun, and it's funny and approachable, and all the things that Hallmark promises is in the movie. So
that's great. Yeah, I love Hallmark movies, but that's really cool. We have a guy who wrote in one of our Stars book.
Yeah,
who is in the middle of making a movie of his life right now.
Oh, fantastic!
Videos. And so we're all can't wait till next year when that comes out and we can go see it.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Is it a documentary or is it a fictionalized version of his life?
I think it's a fictionalized version, but I'm sure there's some truth in there.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
It's going to be called Pocket of Hope, and his name
Oh.
is Chad Gaines. And so
That's
it's a fascinating story how he got to do this movie about his life. And he's talked about this on our podcast, so I can tell you that he was basically homeless and working in a restaurant, and he went to get coffee one morning, and there were these two guys that worked for a big studio company that were talking about, we have to get a script to our boss. And he was standing right there, and he's like, I'm sorry that I overheard your conversation, but I think I might have something for you.
Oh, that's great.
So the I don't remember the name of the company. It's a big one, you would know. But he said they offered him $4 million for his script and for him to walk away, and he said no.
Wow. So well, and good for him for keeping his story, because once you sell your story, it can be told any number of ways, and then you lose control over the narrative. So good for him.
But then after that, he saw the Sound of Freedom movie that Angel Studios did. And so then he started looking into Angel Studios, and he went through the whole process, and he got there, but he also is the producer. So he owns all the rights now.
Oh, wow. Good
and
for him.
I learned a lot about that from him when we had this conversation, because I was like, I don't know how movies get made, but I think we need to make a movie about suicide prevention with stars because it's really needed.
It's so important. It's so important. I mean, mental health in general is so overlooked, I feel, in our society. It should be the top of our priority list, in so many ways, and it isn't. My daughter struggled with depression and social anxiety, and it's just so common, and yet it's still not something we talk about as much as we should. And so that's why I'm so glad for the work you're doing.
Well, thank you. I think it's been a big problem for decades, and we're finally talking about it. There's a reason I never talked about my suicide attempt for 23 years.
Yeah.
Especially as a manager, business owner, executive person, because it wasn't okay for a long time. I'm glad that it's finally getting normal, but I heard a statistic lately that said 50% of people on the planet know somebody or know of somebody who's died by suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that percentage is low.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, we lose supposedly 22 veterans a day. I think that number is very much higher.
Yeah. Well, my own cousin who was serving in the military took his own life while he was in the military years ago, and it's something that profoundly affected my family. It's and I feel on the one hand the military did what they could, and on the other hand I feel like they could have done a lot more, and just we as a society could have too. Like it's
definitely
so those statistics are real.
I just think I think the statistics are probably a little bigger numbers than they're reporting, but I don't know that for sure. And I think it's because I think there's a stigma in the whole thing on all levels, on all sides. But I do think that conversations like this one is what starts the healing for people, and the other people that need to know they're not alone and they can speak up.
Absolutely. And I do also feel like, just, from my own personal experience, when I was diagnosed, my daughter was also struggling with depression at the time. And it was, needless to say, it did not help, and I did feel a lot of guilt for what I felt like was burdening, my teenagers who were already, in a mental health struggle with something that was even more stressful, even though it's out of my control. It's not something I chose. But I think so often the struggles that people are going through are made more difficult just by, the challenges of life, whether that's cancer or, losing a job or, any of those things. They just put even more pressure on a situation, that's already fraught, that someone's already struggling. They're already, um, on a tightrope, and you're giving them more things to hold, So I think that's something we as a society should just work on, taking away some of the burdens of that, so that, people can focus on their mental health and getting better. One of the stressors was not having health insurance, so that made both getting cancer care, but also getting counselor appointments difficult, challenging. If there were ways to make that easier for families, I think it would go a long way toward just easing the burden, on so many people.
I love your tightrope analogy. I think that's a good one. I think that also that there are people who there's like you said, there's so much in society that we could fix and that we could do better. And I think, this has been going on for decades, but I think during the pandemic, it kind of made it worse because it isolated everybody.
Yeah.
And, our mission is all about human connection and how that helps people have conversations and have, share their story, where people learn that, somebody else is struggling with this too. And I think between that and social media and all the things that are going on in our world right now, that it's really hard for people to speak their mind about anything and not get attacked for it, no matter what side you're on of any.
I agree. Everyone's so polarized. They're so in their different camps. But the point you make about the pandemic and COVID, I think, is so right on, because I know all of our kids were affected by it, but my daughter the most, my oldest daughter the most, because she went into lockdown at the end of middle school. And so for her last year of middle school, she didn't go. And then she sort of had to skip over whatever the last part of middle school was, and then start again in person as a freshman in high school, which is overwhelming without COVID. But just to have that and not, she left boys that were 4 feet tall and with squeaky voices, and then she went to school with 6 feet tall, with deep baritone voices, and it was, overwhelming. Not only isolating, because she wasn't with her peers, but she wasn't with her peers at a key moment, in development, talking with her teachers and the principals. They said they weren't even sure how to help the kids, because they just didn't have that human connection, that socialization, at the very key moment they needed it, at 13.
Hi there, it's Dina. If you like our podcast and you're enjoying learning about other people's stories of overcoming adversity, please go over to therealizefoundation.org and support us by donating. We believe that conversations, community, and personal story can change lives and reduce suicide ideation. And we also have a way, if you have a business, you can support us without money out of your pocket. So go on over to realizefoundation.org and look at the donate page, and you can learn how to support us as a business, and also you can donate any amount. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And I mean, even younger kids that were in first, second, third grade had a similar thing. And then the poor seniors that couldn't even have a graduation. I mean, it was just so many things that disrupted their life in whatever stage That makes me emotional.
Yeah, I know. And I feel too, collectively as a society, we've sort of been through a very traumatic event, but we're not really unpacking it. We're just sort of sweeping it under the rug and like, let's move forward. And I don't want to talk about the, pandemic or lockdown or any of those things anymore. That was,
Well,
an aberration. Yeah.
it's another polarizing subject, so nobody wants to talk about it.
Right. Because then you can't, how do you even get your hands around it? Like, 'cause without getting to the, well, they did this wrong, or I agree with this, or I don't agree with that. But I mean, if you take the politics out of it, it was a traumatic event.
Yes.
For a lot of people lost loved ones. My grandmother died of COVID during that time. We were isolated and locked away, and that did affect us and our mental health in like profound ways that we're still, I think, dealing with, but we're not openly dealing with. We're sort of like just burying it, moving on. We're all going to be fine. Let's just keep going. Don't look back. That's.
I definitely agree with that. I want to ask you, like, I think, to go back to your story, I think all of us as women have a doctor say to us, you need to get a mammogram. And you're like,
yes, it's scary. It's scary. Yeah. For this reason, do you want to open this door? Right. But I would say, get your mammogram, because as scary as it is, early detection is your very best chance at survival. The earlier they find it, the better your chances are. The cheaper the care is going to be, if that is something you're worried about, which I definitely was, because if you put it off, if you sweep it under the rug, if you just like don't think about it, out of sight, out of mind, and something is wrong, then, and you do have an aggressive kind of cancer, then you maybe don't have as much time as you think. As amazing as medical treatments are, and I know I've known breast cancer, a woman suffering from breast cancer who is in stage 4 and has been there for years, and she's been kept alive, but in treatment all of those years. At the same time, you don't want to. If you can eradicate the cancer, if you can go into remission, if you can head back to your normal life, I highly recommend it. So as scary as it is, I think it's scarier not to do it, because if you don't and you wait too long and it's in stage 2 or 3 or 4, your options are limited. You may decide, like, when I was talking to my doctors and I was asking them, like, if I postponed treatment, or if I had not gotten this mammogram, what would I be looking at? Like, what would it be like? And my oncologist is like, she was very blunt with me, and she said, it's very likely I would not have seen my youngest daughter, who was a sophomore in high school at the time, graduate like that, and I was 50 years old. Like I'd never even imagined, like, not being there for that graduation, at 50. Like this, it was not something I planned for. So definitely get the mammogram. Many states offer free mammograms. It just depends. So health insurance might not even come into play there. So that I would check with your local state and see. But definitely do it. It's worth it to get the good news, and then you can just breathe a sigh of relief and move on. Or if you have the bad news, then you're going to have it as early as you possibly can. If you get it at stage 1, your chances of survival are 99%. So with prompt treatment, you can't get stage 1 and then move to the Bahamas for 2 years and for it to work out. So, but with treatment, your survival rate is better than it's ever been. So get it early, get it taken care of. Yeah, that's what I recommend.
That's good advice. It's still every time I have to do that, I get very nervous, because I had a benign breast tumor when I was in my 20s, and they removed it.
Yeah.
And, I was okay, but my grandmother was diagnosed with breast cancer at 83.
Mm.
She lived to be 93, and it wasn't that killed her, it was something else, and she had done some alternative treatment that really did work for her. I'm not saying it works for everybody, but
Right.
you have to find what's right for you.
Of course.
But I want to know, like, what can you tell us about the book that people would want or need to hear?
Yeah. So the book, I really wrote it in a tone as if your best friend was going through this or going through it with you and could tell you both the good, bad, and ugly about everything, but also offer you some hope. And so that's why every chapter ends with a pep talk, because I feel it's so important in these difficult times to, find the positive side of things. And throughout the book, I use a lot of humor, which might seem, counterintuitive. Like, how can cancer be funny? Although some things are hilarious. I went to a MRI diagnostic test and, just had a hilarious series of mishaps that my husband and I still laugh about today because they're silly. Like, just because you've gotten bad news doesn't mean that there aren't kind of absurd, funny things that happen throughout the process. Like this is just, what happens when I was going to chemotherapy for the first time. I said, well, I'm going to need a pep talk. And my husband, PJ, who's amazing, he said, okay, I'm going to give you a pep talk. And then he immediately started, shouting enthusiastically like the little league coach he is, and just said, yeah, let's go do this. Yeah. And I started laughing because it just seems so absurd. Like, why are we so happy about going to chemotherapy? And he's like, well, you wanted a pep talk. This is what a pep talk is. So there's a lot of humor in the book because I also feel like humor can be your best weapon against cancer because it helps you get a hold of the fear. It's very hard to be afraid and anxious when you're laughing. Laughing helps you take back control of a situation that can largely feel, out of your control. So that's what I hope people take away from the book. And, just to feel seen, supported, and maybe a few coping strategies for how to deal with the stress and everything during cancer treatment. That's
really good. I don't know if you listened to the episode we have with Jennifer Greenhut. Have you seen hers?
Oh, I didn't listen to that one. Okay. I should go back and listen to that one.
She talks about she had breast cancer, but she had I forget, negative, triple something.
Oh, triple negative. Yeah, that one's the hardest one to treat. Yeah.
And so I didn't have the terminology right, but she is doing some really cool things for women with breast cancer. So you guys might want to.
Yeah, I'll listen to that. I'm fascinated. Yeah.
She started a business where she makes these purses that are made for people going to chemo. And it has a whole line of things like that. And I saw a post you made the other day where they were bringing a bunch of stuff to donate somewhere. So yeah, I think with her stuff and your book, you guys could
absolutely
somehow.
I would love that. I also work with a nonprofit called twistedpink.org, and they send out care packages to people in treatment, and they get a free book with the care package. So, but I would love to work with her as well. I'm just all about trying to get the book into as many hands as possible for people who need it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that would be a really good partnership, and you can reach out or let me know if you want me to connect.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would love her contact information, and I'll definitely check out the episode too.
Awesome. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, and I think she just discovered a lump while she was at yoga one day, and they had been. Well, you can listen to it. I won't tell the whole story.
Yeah, you won't spoil it for me.
Spoil it for everybody else if they haven't heard it, but it's a good one too. So I think it's cool to have stories in our podcast that maybe are on the same subject, but they're very different in many ways, and that way people can get different perspectives. But
Yeah.
I loved the book idea and how you wrote it, and that there's humor, because that just, laughing makes everything better.
It does. It does. I mean, scientifically, it like lowers stress. It increases all those good hormones that make us feel good. Yeah, it lowers our blood pressure. It does all of the good things. And I think sometimes when we're going through difficult times, whether that's cancer or any other time, I think sometimes we feel like, well, we shouldn't be laughing. We shouldn't find things funny. But things are funny all the time. I mean, they just are. It's just, the world is ridiculous in many ways. So I think by letting yourself, giving yourself permission to laugh,
Mhm.
and giving yourself the permission to just find things funny and enjoy things, because I think during cancer or any other time, you sort of have to really fight to find, the little joys. And part of those are, finding things funny and humor and laughing with, your spouse or your friend or your kids or your siblings. This is how we bond together. And, it's also how we feel better. So I would say do as much of it as you can. Laugh
Yeah.
as much as you can.
And
I mean, yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, don't tell your oncologist that all you need to do is watch a Netflix stand-up special. That's probably, not medically advisable. However, it can help. So
That's awesome. I was going to say, on the other side of the coin, you could go watch Hallmark movies and allow yourself to cry.
Yes, exactly. Get all the feels. Get the feels out. The laughing, the crying.
I mean, there's science behind that too, that it releases stress, and
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly.
And in my mind, stress is what culminates into any kind of disease.
Yes.
And when we're sick, it's usually because of some kind of stress.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Our bodies are just all out of whack, and then whatever condition we have just piles on more stress, for us. So then it becomes even more, we weren't dealing with it before, and then we're not dealing with it now. So you've got to find some relief. And that's first and foremost, I think, feeling all your feelings. You were saying tune into the Hallmark movie, but I cry, laugh, feel sad, feel happy. Like it's all of the emotions are important to, feel as you feel them.
It's very true. And it's important to express them to people you care about, and talk about it. Because, that's our mission here, is that conversations, community, and personal stories are what give us the human connection we need to not feel alone and to know there's hope. And
Exactly. Because I think we all struggle. And I think it's so often we don't admit we're struggling, whether that's with, cancer or depression or anxiety. I think we all feel like we're just supposed to have it all together, but no one has it all together. We're all messy human beings. Like we're all just making this up as we go. No, when I was diagnosed with cancer, I had no idea what I was going to do, how I was going to even cope. Like I wanted to get on the first plane to anywhere and pretend it wasn't happening, but we're just messy humans. We make mistakes, we struggle, but at the same time, the connection you're talking about with each other is what makes us strong. It's what lifts us up when we're down. It's what, when we, lean on someone and they lean on us, that's also a beautiful part of the human condition. So, the connection is so very important, I think.
Yeah, I do too. And I think it's easy for people to isolate when they're in a dark place and not want to talk about it. But and one of the biggest questions I get the most is I have a friend that is suicidal and I don't know how to help them.
Yeah. I think, when it comes to helping, because I think people feel the same way about friends with breast cancer. Like, how do I help? I'm on the outside. I don't know what to do. I really think it's about showing up and keep showing up. There's a part in the book where, I talk about breaking the news to your friends that you have breast cancer. And, we as humans, we don't like to hear bad news. We avoid bad news. There's been studies shown that, like, if you're predisposed to a genetic condition, you may not get the test because you just don't want to know. You just don't want to know if there's bad news. It's also that reluctance, like, to get the mammogram. That's just human nature. You just don't want the bad news unless it's like thrust upon you. You just don't want it. So I think when people tell other friends bad news, sometimes you get a pity and pivot, which is sort of like a superficial, like, I'm very sorry for you, but can we talk about something else now? Can we, like, did you hear about, our mutual friend, dating someone who's a little bit kooky, or did you hear about so-and-so getting a divorce, or, can we do a pity and then a pivot so that I'm, more comfortable? And I think that the best way to help your friends is just to sit with them, in whatever struggle they're having, whether that's mentally, physically. Ask them questions like, how are you feeling? What's going on in your mind right now? Like, it's completely fine to say, I have no idea what you're feeling, what you're going through, but I would like to know.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about it? Can I help? Can I just sit here and listen? Because if you just sit in that uncomfortable moment, I think it does a lot more than you think to help the other person.
Absolutely. And I think the other part to that is, don't try to fix it.
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
Just listen, let them talk, let them get it out, let them, because when we talk about something or we write something, we process it better in our brain.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when somebody is in that place and they're like upset or crying or just in a dark place, I mean, like, I'm one of those people who don't want to cry in front of anybody. And there are other people who are like that, but then there are other people who don't care.
Mm-hmm.
But I would rather sit with somebody and let them cry than find out that they'd been going through a hard time and I didn't know it and I didn't know how to help.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
The best thing we can do is just listen and be consoling, but not trying to tell them how to fix the problem.
Absolutely. And I would also say to people who are struggling, because I know, for myself and others, sometimes you feel like you shouldn't reach out, like you're a burden. Like, I don't want to burden my friends with sad news or, but your friends want to help. Like, there's in fact, the psychologists have something called the helper's high, where when friends or strangers even do a good deed, help someone in need, whether that's like giving someone a hug who's crying, or baking a pie for someone who's sick, or make soup for someone who's sick, they get a dopamine hit. It's we feel good when we do good. So if you're thinking, oh, I just don't want to burden with someone with my problems, or cry, and then what they're gonna like, do it. Do it. Like, you're gonna make them actually feel better by listening and helping. If they're there for you, they feel better about themselves. So, like, you're doing them a favor. You're not a burden. So I think that's something to keep in mind too when you're struggling.
Yeah, I agree. It's that I don't think anybody cares. I don't think anybody understands. It wipes that out when people are there to listen and support you.
Yeah. And I would say give people a chance, because, if you're thinking that they don't care, if you're thinking, that, they can't possibly understand, I mean, give them a chance. Maybe they could surprise you.
Very true. Very true. Well, this is such a great conversation.
Yes.
Thank you for reaching out to me. And I was really excited to hear that you reached out to me because you listened to our podcast. So.
Yes. No, it's great. I love all the work you're doing. And I just think it's so important to lift people up. There's a lot of tearing people down right now. And, in online and just in our society in general. And I think the more times we can talk about our better selves, like the better we're all going to be. So thank you for having me on. It's been a thrill, and thank you for all the great work you're doing.
Thank you so much.
I'm so happy you joined us for this conversation. My wish is that you found comfort and hope in your own unique situation. If you resonated with our message, please head over to therealizefoundation.org, where you can apply to write your own story in one of our books. You can also download our 60 Ideas for Self-Care on the resources page. I can't wait to hear from you. Until next time, you are not alone, you are worthy, and you are enough.